I'm Erin, and I'm a New Yorker. One of my jobs here in New York City is I give tours of New York City that I created. They are tours based on what's free and cheap to do in New York City. I wanted to do this because I think New York can be such an intimidating city. It is expensive, it can be extremely busy and loud and crowded. And I always feel sad thinking that tourists leave spending all their money and not really understanding or grasping what the city's about. So I created this tour. You can book the tour via Airbnb Experiences. This is what my page looks like. It's called the Backpackers New York City Cheapskate Tour. And my real tour takes about 2 hours. We do about 90 minutes of walking. We stop for a cheap eat in the middle, and we end at a cheapskate bar. But of course, I can't give tours right now. Given the current state of affairs, Airbnb has shut down their experiences as they should have. So I thought while I'm sitting at home, I would give you a virtual version of my tour, just a really quick summary of it, really. And I thought I would show people what I do on the tour. I have two tours. One's in Midtown, one's in the East Village. My Midtown experience is extremely popular. I do it about 4 or 5 times a week. It's geared towards tourists, but I've actually had a lot of New Yorkers come on the tour too, which was a surprise to me, but a really welcome surprise. I think it's really cool. And the tour, like I said, it's based around free and cheap things to do in New York City. It's not a history tour, but I do touch on some New York City history. What it's about is what there is here and now in New York City, what there is to do. Suggestions on what tourists could circle back to on their tour, or for a lot of people who take the tour, they're only in New York for a day or for a quick weekend trip, and they're trying to hit as many sites as possible. And my Midtown tour is great for that because we hit Times Square, Rockefeller Center, a lot of the hot spots. And I'll try to answer some questions that people often ask me while I'm giving the tour too. This is where we start my tour. We meet on the steps of the New York City Public Library. This is the first branch. Now there's 92. This picture was taken this week, and you can tell because there's almost no one in the photo, but also because there are these banners on either side of the library that are out right now celebrating the 125th anniversary of the library. The library was planned in 1895. That's why they're celebrating that this year. But this library didn't open and get dedicated until 1911. In 1911, these lions were also put up on either side of the library. You can see there's one there and there's one on the other side. In the 1930s, Mayor LaGuardia named these lions Patience and Fortitude because it was during the Great Depression. He was telling New Yorkers these are things that we all need to have, patience and fortitude. And I thought that was a really beautiful thing to mention during this time in New York and in the world. When we walk into the library, we are in Astor Hall. Astor Hall, along with the library itself, the staircases in the library, and the Rose Reading Room are all on the list of official New York City landmarks. It's a really beautiful hall. It certainly doesn't feel like you're in a library. It almost feels like you're in a museum. We go up the steps. We don't have to go up any steps today, and we land in the Rose Reading Room. The Rose Reading Room is like the #1 destination that people are coming to see inside the library. It's most famous for its Beaux Arts architecture and those beautiful ceilings. I've never seen it empty like this. It's usually quite crowded with people reading and studying. It can fit over 1,000 people in there reading and studying. That's a little bit more what it looks like usually. In 2014, one of the rosettes from the ceiling fell down to the floor in the middle of the night. That's what that looked like. And that kind of alerted the library that they needed to undergo a renovation. So now it's back and looking more beautiful than ever. It's been recently cleaned and renovated. It was closed for almost a year, but it's reopened now. A lot of people ask me on my tour, is this from the Sex and the City movie? Yes, it is. This is where Carrie gets married in the Sex and the City movie. And it's in a ton of movies. It's in Ghostbusters. It's in The Wiz in like a very interesting way. The lion in The Wiz pops out of the lion statue in front of the library and does a nice little dance number in front of the library. And then the day after tomorrow is another one people always ask me about, and they take shelter in the library. Some shots from that. The only other thing that we look at in the library on my tour is the original Winnie the Pooh dolls. These are A.A. Milne, the author of Winnie the Pooh's son's toys. His son, named Christopher Robin, received the teddy bear in 1921, and they sit in the children's wing of the library. They've been there since 1897. And here is a picture of Christopher Robin with that same bear. The library itself is a huge, incredible free resource, not just for New Yorkers. Of course, New Yorkers like us, we can get library cards, but even for tourists, anybody can go in that library, and there are tons of exhibits. Those are just two really brief things, but the exhibits change based on when it was Comic-Con, they had comics. When it was Christmas, they had a original copy of A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens in there. They are constantly changing and updating, and have tons of exhibits you could walk around and look at. It's full of tourists. They get about 2.3 million visitors a year in there. The only thing is they search your bags when you leave, and when you come in and when you leave. The library is inside Bryant Park. Bryant Park is another really awesome, free, and cheap resource for New Yorkers and for tourists. Depending on the season, we talk about what's going on there. In the winter, that's where the only free ice skating rink is. And in the summer, they have tons of other free things. Free lessons on the lawn, free performances, free music, free dance performances. It's just awesome. And a lot of times during my tours, we'll walk out and we happen to catch one of those things, which is cool. After that, we're on the corner of 5th Avenue and 42nd Street, and we start walking up 5th Avenue. For non-New Yorkers reference, just so you know, a block takes about a minute to walk. It's about 20 blocks per mile, so it takes about 20 minutes to walk a mile. It takes about 20 minutes to walk 20 blocks. So you walk up 2 blocks, and I always point out this Five Below store. A lot of Americans probably know this store. It's a dollar store. Everything in the store now I think is under $10. But this location is cool for tourists especially because it's full of New York City souvenirs. So I often recommend tourists who are in the market for souvenirs circle back to this shop, which is on 5th Avenue between 44th and 45th. Then we walk up 2 more blocks to 46th Street. 46th Street is Little Brazil. Giuliani named it Little Brazil. Little Brazil is most well known for their Brazilian Day celebration, which is always in September. We take a left onto 46th Street, and on 46th Street, the first thing we see is this coffee shop called Matto, or Espresso Matto. Matto means crazy in Italian. Espresso Matto is a chain that I always like to tell tourists about because everything in the shop is $2, which is a great deal in New York City. Lattes, cappuccinos, scones, coffee cake, whatever. Everything here is $2, and it's a local chain. I think there's over 10 locations, a lot of them based in Midtown near touristing. So if you're a tourist on the hunt for coffee, this is a good bet. And sometimes my tours are as early as 9 a.m., so we might stop for a coffee. The tours always change depending on my guests and what they're looking for. The real reason we turn on 46th Street is not the coffee, it's the pizza. This is a Two Bros location. This is one of my guests. They sent me this photo after our tour because they went back to get more pizza, even though they'd gotten pizza on our tour. This is Two Bros Pizza. Just like Matto Espresso, it's a local chain. You can type in Two Bros Pizza to your Google Maps and you can see all the locations. There's tons. There's quite a few places that do dollar slices in New York City. I like Two Bros the best. And so they're plain cheese slices $1. They have other toppings for more money, whatever. There's me giving a tour. But this is a really fun New York City experience. It's not a restaurant. You can kind of sit or stand and eat your pizza, and then you move. My tour was a little bit rocked this January when I showed up with the tour group. I had been there the day before, it was $1. The next day, they had raised their price to $1.50. No big deal. And this Two Bros is the only location that changed their price. I think it's because it's in Times Square, Midtown, and near a lot of tourist locations. Okay. Then we go back to 5th Avenue. Once we're on 5th Avenue, we continue our walk uptown, and this is kind of our view. Saks Fifth Avenue is right here. St. Patrick's Cathedral is right here. We don't go in either of those places, but these are spots you could circle back to later you were interested, Saks is one of the famous department stores in New York City, just like Bloomingdale's and Macy's. For tourists who are looking to go inside a New York City department store, they're all fun to go inside. Obviously, there are shops free to go inside. I recommend Macy's the most, though, because that's where the first ever escalator was in the world, and they still have wooden escalators in operation that you can ride. But Saks is very famous now for their holiday light show that they put on the outside of their building, and of course their holiday windows like the rest of New York City department stores. This is taken in 2018, and this is pretty much how it still is every December from November to January, really. It's very crowded. It's a whole different tour when we're doing it around the holidays. This year in 2019, or this past December 2019, the holiday light show and the windows at Saks were a Frozen 2 theme. Right beyond Saks is St. Patrick's Cathedral. St. Pat's was built in 1879, so that's the oldest thing we see on the tour. That's even before the library. And again, another free, beautiful thing to go inside and see. They can do up to 15 masses a day in there. They have more visitors than the library. They have over 5 million a year. And obviously really beautiful, and you can see it from quite far. It stands out a lot among the skyscrapers. After we go to St. Pat's, I'm going to try to speed through this a little bit. We're all looking at screens a lot, so I'm not going to take too much more of your time. After St. Pat's, we cut across through Rockefeller Center. We're headed towards 6th Avenue. Rockefeller Center changes a little bit, just like Bryant Park, depending on the season. This is obviously winter. It has the ice skating rink. We talk about Rockefeller Center and all the things that are going on there. NBC Studios are in Rockefeller Center. Top of the Rock Observation Deck, which is a really popular tourist attraction, is in Rockefeller Center. The Tonight Show, sometimes we'll see people waiting in line to go to SNL when we're in Rockefeller Center. We talk about FAO Schwartz. We talk about the Christmas tree, Radio City Music Hall. Sometimes my guests will take photos with the toy soldiers outside of FAO Schwartz. Then we hit Times Square. We try not to stay too long in Times Square because if you've been to New York lately, you know you can get sort of accosted by characters trying to take photos with you, or people trying to sell bus tickets. And because I often take photos of people, they can spot the tourism very quickly. Sometimes I bring my Polaroid and we take photos. Sometimes I'm in photos with guests. It's pretty fun, but we try to keep it brief in there because we are in Times Square, and I always have to warn my guests it's about to get a lot more crowded as we walk in there. Times Square is called Times Square because the New York Times building was located there, which is always a fun fact. People are also very surprised to see how small the ball drop area is. They picture it being like it actually drops, but it's just that little pole there. After we walk through Times Square is my favorite part of the tour. We walk all the way down on 46th Street. We walk through Restaurant Row, and we end at Rudy's Bar and Grill, which is on 9th Avenue between 45th and 46th. Rudy's Bar and Grill has $3 beers, which is hard to find in New York City anywhere, but especially in Midtown. A lot of places in Midtown are going to have $10 draft beers. So this is Rudy's Bar and Grill. Rudy's is a neighborhood institution. They always have people in there. Those early morning 9 a.m. tours that I talked about, we get here about 10:30, and there's already a full bar in there. They have $3 their own beer, Rudy's Blonde and Rudy's Red, and Budweiser is $3 too. But they also have local IPAs and cider and a full cocktail bar. But the other fun thing about Rudy's is they give free New York City hot dogs with every drink, which is a big hit. Now people have checked off one more thing off their New York City to-do list. They've had their New York City hot dog. I love this part of the night or day or morning because I get to really chat with my guests about what else they want to do while they're in New York City, what else they have planned for their day. I can help them get on the subway the right way or plan out what to do. I can talk to them about what they like back in their home state or city or town and direct them to something that they might like here in New York. The other thing that I love about this part of my tour is oftentimes a guest will buy me a beer. If you would like to buy me a beer, I'm going to put my Venmo in the description here. It's at Erin Catherine Fitzpatrick. And if you Venmo me $3, the price of a beer at Rudy's, I will send you my list of all the free and cheap things that I send to all my guests. When guests book the tour on the Airbnb page, I automatically send them a list of all my favorite free and cheap tourist things, but also free and cheap things that I truly love to do in New York. And a couple things that aren't free or cheap, but are worth the money. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. It went a little longer than I thought it would, but stay healthy, everybody, and I hope to see you guys on a tour soon. Bye.